aloha and cheers. This is Tiger Singleton, aka Tigmonk. It's spiritual bullshit time.
Yay!
Joining me, Maya Lila. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
Yeah, are you enjoying this heat?
I have not spent that much time in the heat. I've spent
right.
more time in the air conditioning, so enjoying, I would not say no. I've not consciously enjoyed the heat. I haven't relished.
Right, well, you're enjoying the contrast that air conditioning provides.
Yes. I feel very refreshed as soon as I get into the air conditioning.
Yeah, that's how I'm enjoying it. I'll step out in the 107-degree heat and be like, man, I really appreciate air conditioning.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I was thinking that on the drive over. I was like,
yeah.
I'm so grateful for my car with its air conditioning.
Yeah, it is funny because when it gets that hot outside, it's kind of like, what is this? What is going on? It always reminds me of opening the oven and then feeling, you know, you got it on broil or something and all this heat comes out.
Yeah, just the wave. Well, and also it's like, how did people, like when we didn't have air conditioning,
right?
Did they just all go sit in the river or just not move all day, just laid in one place? Because it's hot.
Yeah, it reminds me of the image of driving by like a pasture and you see 100 cows in like one shadow of a tree.
Yeah.
You know, because everyone's trying to hide from the heat.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine it's something like that.
Yeah.
But shoot, well, welcome to the show. And we don't have anything planned because this is spiritual bullshit.
Yeah.
And that's how we like to roll. I think we create the perfect job for ourselves where we can just show up and see what happens. Right? No pressure, no stress.
Well, and that's kind of how I want to live my life.
Yeah.
And that's I've formed my life around that principle and that idea of not wanting to stress and not wanting to have to plan too much. And it's almost because I used to be a planner and plan everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of now I'm the opposite where I plan nothing and I try not even to make commitments like more than like now, the present.
Yeah.
Like I try not to plan anything for like next week.
Yeah.
Because I've really just made that choice of living this stressful, living in the moment.
Right,
like how can I really live in the moment?
Well, that's a perfect topic starter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Following the flow and following your joy, creating a stress-free life. Because in what I started to recognize the possibility of that is when I started doing satsang.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how long ago, 5-7 years or whatever, but it's one of these things where I just kind of show up. I don't have a plan, really have no clue what I'm going to talk about, and then I just wait and see what happens. And every time it's worked out. Like over, I don't know, 200-300 satsangs, it's like there's never been a plan. Yeah. You just kind of show up, and that has kind of taught me that it's okay to not know what the next moment's going to look like. And what it also teaches me is, especially when you go around starting out, it's like, oh, there's one person here. Oh, there's two people here. You kind of let go of any expectation of how it should be, because that's what creates the stress, is it's not going how it should.
Yeah.
But really, you're just showing up to serve the moment.
Yeah.
It's like whatever is happening, then that's what the moment's asking for. And so I've kind of had that approach with any kind of work that I do. It's like, you know what? I don't know what's going to happen. And so I'm just going to show up and see what happens.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of trust, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and that it ends up being so much more profound, though, usually. Because if you're thinking, okay, today I'm going to talk about this, and like you have it all mapped out, it might be relevant or meaningful for the person or the people, but it also might not resonate at all. And I feel like when you can show up with that space, you can connect with what's going on really with the people that are there in the moment.
Yeah.
And when you can pick up on that and kind of channel it, then it's so much, because it's in the present moment and it's so much richer and fuller. And
because it's like you're available for the reality of the moment rather than your plan.
Yeah, your idea of the reality.
Especially when it comes to connecting with human beings. And I just told you I was at the youth correction place talking to them and the students trying to figure out, okay, how can we have an educational program? And I was trying to explain to them a little bit about this, about showing up and serving the moment and connecting on a heart space level as opposed to connecting with a plan.
Well, on the mind level.
Yeah, and of course, as a big organization, you know, they want to see the plan.
Yeah.
You know, we want to know what you're talking about every minute.
Yeah.
And, you know, for the sake of appeasing that, I can create such material.
Yeah.
But it's always a comedy for me because I'm writing this stuff out and really in the back of my heart, I'm like, I don't know.
Well, and it's also for them, it's the safety of like, okay, well, we know what he's going to say because he showed us this whole plan and we have control over it. And he's not going to go off and say some crazy stuff, you know? And going back to like building a life around that, I feel like I've let go of a lot of, you know, jobs that require that kind of thinking. Because I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. You know, I've been in corporate America and I've done these like very high-end jobs and working with people in the government or whatever. And I'm just like, it's a fun game to play, but it's not the game that I want to play.
Right.
So like I've checked out and I've minimized my life so that I can live in a more free way. You know?
Yeah, and I think that's probably a big question for people too, is to ask, how can I create such a life? You know, where I do have that freedom and I don't have to necessarily have a plan all the time. And really, from my perspective, it's what are you open to? Because most of the time, people don't even think it's an option. And so they just keep doing what they're doing because it's like, oh, this is the only way.
Yeah.
I've got bills to pay, so I have to have a job. End of story. And so first and foremost, we have to like open up within ourselves that it's actually possible that I can create something. I know from my own experience, I used to have a corporate office job as a freight broker, and I would go to work every day, and there'd be times I'd just step outside and start bawling because it's like, this doesn't resonate. And this whole running my schedule according to somebody else, it just didn't jive with my soul or my spirit. And I remember having these just like really heartbreak moments of just surrendering, of being like, I know it doesn't resonate, but I don't know what else to do. You feel kind of trapped. But I think there's a beauty in that because it forces you to let go.
Yeah. You let go, and then by letting go, you're more open to these other potentials and possibilities of like, and then I think too, like seeing other people doing it, because you're always like, well, how do they do it? And so then you find out, and how they do it is not going to be how you do it, because it never works out like that. It's like, oh, here, XYZ, this is how you live on an island and work from your computer. It's like, well, that's a potential, and it's inspiring, because you're like, okay, well, this person did it, so maybe I could do that in my own way, like down my own path, which is going to look differently.
Right. Yeah, because I can see the mind says, okay, well, I want to know how.
You
know, which again is going back to the plan and the mental space.
And the safety and the, it's safety and security. And again, it's that illusion of safety and security, because people can work, you know, like our parents worked at their jobs and they did the secure, safe thing. And then a lot of them lost everything in the crash in 2007. It's like all this year, like all the years of work and planning and safety and saving. And it could disappear if the stock market crashes.
True.
So there is no security.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if that's what we're looking for ultimately, in order for us to follow our heart, let's talk about the safety and security, because I know that the perspective of that has changed dramatically from my life. Of like, what am I really putting my trust in here?
Yeah.
What am I hoping for? What do I think is going to provide for me? And from my own space, it's really been this falling away of every sense of security outside of the present moment. It's like any idea about tomorrow that this might happen or might not, you just got to let it go. And come back to the present moment and see that the only thing you can rely on is right now, which I think brings you to this place of stillness, which is peaceful and joyful, and you're more in alignment now. It's like not so much like what are the steps and stuff I need to take, it's more of a question of how can I become a vibratory match for what I'd like to experience.
And that's, again, goes back to that paradox, like, you think that the externals are going to get you what you want, but actually, if you can create the internal state of having what you want already, then you already have it. You have the internal state, and then the outside ends up reflecting that back to you. And so it's like, it's just so backwards how we're taught to do it and how our society does it versus the actual reality of the truth of living in the present moment.
And the beauty there is no security that says it's going to work out how you think it's going to work out. But when you learn to kind of master the frequency thing, it almost doesn't matter if it works out like that.
Exactly.
Which is the biggest like joke of it all. It's like, okay, I'm going to align my vibration so that I get XYZ. But you align your vibration, now XYZ doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. But then you're free. And so again, it's like, it's just so, it's like this hall of mirrors, you know, and that's when we talk about the illusion of this reality. Like my name, Maya Lila, is a spiritual name, and Maya is the illusion of this reality, and Lila means divine play in Sanskrit.
Oh, I love that.
And so it's like the game of God playing human. And it's a reminder for myself of like, okay, you know, because this is like my life philosophy. And even if whether or not it's true or it's crazy, I don't care. It's how I want to live my life, and it's the game that I'm choosing to play.
And it's fun.
And so it's my reminder for myself, you know, of that. It's all an illusion, and it's all a game. And so how do I want to play it? And I want to play it. I want to be joyful. I want to enjoy it. I want to be free of the internal and the external limitations, which again goes back to that, like creating the feeling state of what I want rather than chasing after the external securities or the money to try to get to that state.
Totally. Yeah, I love that because it's like no matter what we do in this life, it's always bringing us back to that internal experience, because it seems like a never-ending quest in the manifest world to get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like we can play that game until we stop breathing, but yet the whole time we're with anxiety about it, that it might not happen or whatnot. And I think that's like the big secret that people miss, is that this really isn't about controlling.
Mm-hmm.
It's really not about even shaping reality.
Mm-hmm.
That's like all so secondary.
Yeah.
And I see people come into this path hoping to become the controller.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
oh, I can see the potential, and then the ego jumps in.
Yeah.
It says, oh, I can control everything.
Yeah. I'm going to manifest $1 million. I'm going to manifest a mansion. I'm going to manifest the perfect boyfriend.
Yeah.
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 And Abraham Hicks is, aside from Alan Watts, they're my other favorite teachers.
Yeah,
Abraham Hicks and Alan Watts. And people, this is Shasta, by the way.
She just introduced herself.
Yeah. Shasta's 10 months old, and she's our guest speaker. So you'll hear her tapping on things and chewing on things and coughing.
I wish they could hear that smile right now. That's so adorable.
So Abraham Hicks, people think that... She's like, I got a lot to say about Abraham Hicks. People think that their teachings are you can manifest what you want, but actually it's manifesting that feeling state. And they say that your desires never end, and having desires is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, not Buddhism where you're trying to get rid of all your desires. It's getting rid of that lack state of thinking the desire is going to give you something.
Right.
And just creating that internal state and having it already, and then it coming to you in some magical form, not necessarily exactly what you want. In like the $1 million check being deposited in my bank account tomorrow. Yeah. But and even that, it's like there are these profound spiritual teachings, but they always get twisted by the mind. Yeah. I feel like the ego always starts to twist them around, and then it gets all confused. Yeah. You know.
Yeah, and that's like the nature of the mind.
Yeah.
To always twist it around.
Yeah.
But yeah, Alan Watts, that's like, I couldn't even count the hours I've logged in my
me
lifetime
too.
listening to him. I mean, like, I remember even on a couple occasions where it's like 6 hours nonstop, you know, just in my headphones as I'm just living my life.
I was talking with a friend the other day about brainwashing and cults. And so a cult is culture. Like our culture is a cult, but it's just the most accepted cult is our culture. And we've been brainwashed. As children, we brainwash children. This is how our culture works. This is what you do. This is what you don't do. Mm-hmm. And I've figured out what I've essentially done for myself by listening to Alan Watts and Abraham Hicks and Eckhart Tolle and these spiritual teachers for hours and hours. I've brainwashed myself with the things that my heart knows is true, but my mind hasn't quite figured out yet. And so that's been my work, is to, in a way, brainwash myself in the way that I choose to be brainwashed.
That's so great, because brainwash can be such a negative connotation.
Yeah, and cult is negative too.
Yeah.
And it's the fear of like, I'm going to be a victim. And it's like, well, you're not going to be a victim, so stop worrying. Yeah. And just choose. What do you want?
Unless you create a culture of victimhood.
Which we have. Right? Yeah, that's true. And then... So you can stay safe and stay in the cult of culture and stay a victim. Yeah. Which you can choose to do, but I didn't enjoy that. Right. And I didn't want to do that anymore.
And it seems like the breaking away of all of that is really just this fear of not knowing myself. Like this fear of not having an identity. And that's what the draw is to cult or to culture, is a sense of belonging or a sense of who I am.
Yeah.
And so we're always drawn to that, you know, in our social circles or whatever, even our jobs. It's like, oh, now I know who I am.
Yeah, by the externals.
Yeah, by the external of what's going on. And I think once we clear that up, and for myself, it's this recognition that I'll never be anything.
Yeah.
And no matter where I go, no matter what I accomplish or imagine myself to accomplish, it doesn't change the fact that I'm still nothing.
And everything.
And everything at the same time. And so there's this freedom of just walking in that empty space.
Yeah.
That's not caring so much about how I'm perceived or even like how I perceive myself.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see the value there, but sometimes it gets to the point where it's just more nonsense of like trying again mentally to create the perfect image or whatever.
With words.
Yeah,
too,
with
which
words.
Words are never the thing. They're always this, not this, not this. Words are defined by what they are not. So when you use words to define things, then it's never ending, not that.
Yeah. Because it's like you can say, okay, I am consciousness. And for when that's new to somebody, that can seem expansive.
Yeah.
And so it's the expansive nature that resonates.
Yeah.
Because there's a truth to
They're
that.
like, that's true.
Yeah. But then sooner or later, that just becomes another concept. And you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything.
Or the mind starts to say, well, I'm consciousness, and that person's not conscious.
Yeah.
And then it starts to divide and separate.
And shrinks
which
back
is not
down.
the truth. Yeah. And then you limit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's always, again, it's tricky with that. I think whenever you do take on a concept, like I am conscious, then immediately, once you define yourself as one thing, then you are not something else. I'm not unconscious.
Yeah.
So then somebody else is. And then again, it's
and now I have to find those people so that I can know that I'm conscious. And this happens so much in spirituality too. It's such a crack up.
The comparison.
Especially it's like if we say, I want to see myself as a good person, that means I need to know who's bad.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a spiritual person, they're not spiritual. Yeah. And so we're constantly trying to validate that, you know, within ourselves, which, you know, of course, that's part of the play and part of the journey. I think we all go through that.
Yeah. It is, it's tricky though. I find myself going in and out of like being in the space of like, okay, like it's all perfect and everyone's a miracle and everything's fine. And then like, oh, these assholes, you know? And then, oh, okay, wait, you know? and I was thinking the other day about how, especially with our society, it's always a competition or like better than, worse than. Like this is good, this is bad. And then even high vibration. Like, I'm high vibration, that person's low vibration. Or a feeling. Right. Anger is low vibration, joy is high vibration. But when we think of colors, we don't say red is worse than blue.
Yeah, high red and low yellow.
Yeah, but they are different frequencies. They're different vibrations. But we don't say that one is worse than the other. We just say they're different. Yeah. And so I really try to keep that in my mind of even with emotions. Like, I prefer joy. But anger is also beautiful, and it's a different color. Yeah. But it doesn't make it worse or lower. It's just different.
Yeah, it's funny because over the past couple days, I've seen myself kind of go into this valley, you know, in comparison to the peak emotionally. And it's this energetic play that always happens that I can never get away from. 10 years ago, I would have called it depression. Yeah. Today, I wouldn't use the word because it's got a negative connotation to it. Yeah. But the energetic flow is very similar in the way that it tells me to slow down. Yeah. It tells me to observe some mental movement. Yeah. And I see it as just a great gift that's trying to show me something. And so it's not identified as a negative space, even though in comparison to the joyful tiger that people are familiar with, they could see, oh, something's wrong. Yeah. But again, from my perspective, if I'm hanging out having a Netflix day, processing emotion, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Because there's a freedom within me that allows for it. Yeah. And I think that's what contributes to like this steady sense of joy that isn't necessarily happy as like a feeling state. It's just this contentment all the way through. Yeah. That no matter how I'm feeling, it's okay. Yeah. And because, again, in my experience with depression early on, it was the fighting of the energy. It was thinking, oh, this is ugly. This isn't who I want to be. Yeah. And so it shouldn't be this way. I need to get rid of it. Yeah. Not realizing that there's so much value to be seen there. Yeah. And I actually had one of the high school kids that we've been working with for the School of Blooming sent me a message on Facebook saying that, you know, she's finding herself slipping into this depression and she's really scared. And just by asking a couple questions here and there and then getting her long responses, she just kind of totally came to this conclusion of, oh, this is about loving all of myself. You know, it's not about trying to make myself this way or this way. It's loving whatever wants to flow through me. And you could just sense like this relief in her own world about, oh, I don't have to fight this. Yeah. And then it's not depression anymore. Yeah. It turns into just deep rest.
Yeah, and that's the labels, depression, or, you know, all these labels that we give to things because that's bad, and we need to fix it, and we need to change it, and it's not okay, you know, and it's not unfortunate because it is what it is, but it's definitely a lesson that I've gone through, too, of learning how to be okay with that, and, like, I'm angry, or I'm sad, and I don't need to make myself be more joyful, or, like, get out of it, or, like, raise my vibration, or, like, you know, flog myself for this state. It's like, okay. You know, like, it's okay. It's beautiful, and it has a purpose. Whether that's I need to look at what I'm thinking or the assumptions that I'm making that are causing me to feel this way.
Yeah, because a lot of times we feel these states of being, and we think, okay, I have to raise my vibration, which is to say it should be something other. But the way that I interpret that, because again, high vibration, low vibration, I don't really like the words there, but the way that I see it is, the invitation is to raise your vibration within your current capacity, with what's showing up. And so even if you're experiencing sadness, it doesn't mean that you go to happiness. It means that you see the sadness with a clearer perception, which is to see it for what it is and to not be threatened by it, not be a victim of it, but to allow it to unfold naturally. And then that turns into a beautiful experience that's a high vibration.
Yeah.
And so I think there's, confusion there as we're trying to align ourselves. It's not always feeling a certain way.
Yeah.
It's really just having this contentment that all is well.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, moving around. Like, that's, again, what makes it beautiful. Like, a rainbow isn't just one color. Yeah. It's not just red. It's beautiful because it's all the colors.
Exactly.
And so that movement, again, it's like that dancing with all the colors, or that, that movement is what makes it beautiful. Because otherwise, it would just be, if it's just all red, it's like, okay, well, it's just all
cool
red.
It's cool for 5 minutes.
Yeah. And
that's the beauty in being human, is that we have this full range of experience.
Yeah.
And that really helps us connect with our own authenticity.
Yeah.
And I love how there's emotional experiences that we just don't have control over. Because it's humbling in a way. It kind of brings you down to a simplicity of being, which is to just be with it.
Yeah.
And it's almost like life forces you to see the beauty in it. And if you don't see it, then you'll just play the game all over again.
Well, it's like that, kind of like we're talking about the breaking of the heart, is it breaking of the illusions, or like the protection. And so that's kind of like that breaking of the illusion of control. Yeah. Like I'm always going to be happy. Totally. I'm going to control this. It's like, no, you're not. Yeah. Like, things are going to happen, and that's okay. Like, that's, learn to love it and like be okay with it and see the beauty instead of fighting it or getting submerged. Because I feel like too, there's that fear of going down and dying, or being submerged or consumed by the sadness or the depression. Yeah. Which is, it is scary because you don't have control over it. Yeah. It's like, can you be okay with not having control over it?
Yeah, and that's such a fun test. Yeah. And sometimes an ugly test. Yeah. But it's one that we all have to experience. Yeah. But, the breaking down of that shell around the heart. Because I've always had the sense that the heart never really breaks.
Yeah, no. Yeah. It expands. Yeah. It gets bigger with the more breakages of those walls. Yeah. But, it's not the heart breaking.
Yeah, and then in that is the beauty. It's like, I always kind of look at it from the perspective of a relationship breakup. Yeah. Because you could be so bothered by it and so heartbroken, but it's really preparing you for a deeper experience of connection.
Yeah, definitely.
And so when you can fall in love with that and allow it, even though you can't control it.
Yeah. And it's painful.
Yeah. But you're really like doing yourself this service by allowing it to take place.
You're gaining freedom. Yeah. I would say definitely, like, in my experience of heartbreak, like, I've gained freedom, I've gained strength. Yeah. Yeah. And compassion. Yeah. Because when you really suffer like that, then you understand when other people have suffered. You know, if you've never really had your heart broken, you're not really going to get it when your friend has their heart broken.
Yeah. And of course, that's just what brings us all together. Yeah. Too. And I love that we're forced to lose control in that way, to see our similarity with everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like that, again, it's like a wake-up call. It wakes us up to, like, oh, we are all the same. Like, we all have these feelings. Every feeling that you've ever felt. Yeah. Everybody else has felt also. Yeah. It feels so personal at the time, but it's like, no, everybody's felt that feeling. Yeah. And maybe to different degrees, again, like, depending on how deep you've gone or how hard your heart's been broken.
And we're giving different interpretations to the feeling as well. Yeah. But the energetic flow, I think we're all experiencing the same thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like when you look at it from that way, it becomes kind of exciting. Whereas, like, I've been in places like, oh, I don't ever want to get my heart broken again, or I don't want to get hurt again. But if I look at it as an opportunity for expansion and deeper feeling and more love, then it's like, well, that's kind of exciting.
It is, too. And that's like the beautiful opportunity that we have, is to see that everything that's happening is happening for us. Yes. And it's like, okay, we can see that on one or two experiences, but when it breaks open and you see everything that you've experienced has been there to serve you, and I think there's value in sitting silently and really observing that and reflecting on your life about how everything is teaching you and it's on your side. Mm-hmm. And when you see that so clearly, it's like fear drops out about the future, because you see, oh, the only thing that could happen tomorrow is another opportunity to see love. Yeah. And that's when you're really free to live in this moment, because you're not afraid of what might or might not happen. Yeah. It's like, I'm just going to move in the most joyful way that I can and trust that life's going to show me what I need to see.
Yeah.
And that way, life is no longer about becoming someone.
Yeah.
It's no longer about solely getting the promotion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's totally about life.
Yeah.
And about the journey of the heart.
Yeah. And being
mm-hmm.
perfect now in this place where you
Yeah.
are,
Yeah,
and just enjoying that rather than the constant striving. Like, I used to be in that state of waiting.
Yeah.
Like, okay, when I was young, like, okay, well, when I graduate from high school, and then I'll go to college, and then I'll get a job, and then I'll have a house and car, and then I'll be happy.
Yeah.
You know, and just that always that future,
Yeah.
and it never comes, and it's soul crushing. You know,
It is.
It's. I feel like that's one of the worst feelings, is that waiting for something that never comes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
some people spend their whole lives in that
Yeah.
state of waiting for the thing that never
like
comes.
retirement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they get sick, and then they can't do all the things that they thought that they were going to do that were going to make them happy, and then
Yeah.
they're on their deathbed, and they're freaking out, you know, because it's like, I was never really here
Yeah.
in the moment enjoying whatever this is right now.
And that seems like every argument that someone would have on their deathbed
Yeah.
is that I wasn't present.
Yeah.
You know, however you want to paint that or whatever story, but it comes down to this experience of not fully engaging,
Yeah.
which is like living without fear and,
Yeah.
and all of that. And so, and I ponder that sometimes for my own life. Actually, just the other day, I was thinking how, okay, I'd be on my deathbed, and there would only be this sense of gratitude
Yeah.
of, oh my God, that was so much fun.
Yeah.
About just engaging life without concern for loss.
Yeah.
Or, you know, maybe this won't happen, or maybe it won't.
Or the future, I feel like that's also practice. Like, because when you're in the present, you're basically dying to the future because
Yeah.
you don't know what's going to happen, so you're letting that go. And so if you can be present when you're going through the death process, you've been practicing for not having a future, basically,
Yeah.
for being in this present moment. So then the experience comes like, okay, what is this dying experience like?
Mm-hmm.
You know, which that's going to be its own journey.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, I like the thought of just dying every day.
Yeah.
Of just, you know, waking up and realizing, and again, the very real truth that it might not be another one, you know, and
it's gonna not be another one someday.
Yeah,
like, that's gonna come.
Yes.
So
Sooner or later. Get used to it right
Yeah.
now. Yeah, and of course, there's the concern of it being responsible, and this reminds me of a conversation I had earlier today. I told somebody, it's like, you know, sometimes I don't know if I have an insane amount of trust or if I'm just a complete idiot.
Yeah. I've had that thought too. Like, exactly. Like, maybe I'm just crazy and lazy and just not trying hard enough or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like, or do I really have faith? And
Yeah.
and again, for me, it's gone back to me looking at my life
Yeah.
and how things have worked out. And even in this present moment, I am happier than I was when I was living the other life.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just time. I
Right.
can't, I have no control to test. Like, okay, if I did this path versus this path,
Right.
which one would have made me happier? But the amounts of anxiety that I used to feel, the amounts of discontent, the amounts of emotional drama that I would create with people, you know, even just the worrying, the constant worrying, is so much less now that I've chosen this practice of being present and just enjoying whatever comes and just letting go.
Yeah. Yeah, it seemed like for myself, it's similar in the way of just no more drama with other people. That's like probably the most noticeable for me, just in the way that nobody else is making me feel a certain way.
Because we don't let them. Like, I feel like I don't give other people the responsibility for my emotions.
Yeah.
And I don't give them the responsibility to meet my expectations.
Yeah.
For me not to feel like a victim or whatever. And so it's a choice that I make all the time, though. And again, like, you're also, like, you know, a single parent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
well, single parent, but I don't even know if I understand the definition of that. I have a daughter who I split time with.
Okay, you have a daughter that you split time with.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people will make that into this horrible story.
Yes.
Of drama and suffering and victimhood. And because I have a daughter and I'm not in a traditional relationship with the father. And it's interesting to observe that and just the choices. Like, if I wanted to, I could make a big old mess of this and I could get very angry and I could blame and I could go down that path.
Yeah.
But I choose not to every day.
Yeah.
And for me, it's not even about like, oh, well, I want to appear this like enlightened being. It's like, I don't want to suffer.
Yeah, it's for your own sanity.
Yeah, it's for my own sanity.
Yeah.
Because I could go down that normal path. I feel like people do that because they expect that that's what they're supposed to do when they're in certain situations.
Yeah.
Like when they go through a divorce. You're supposed to be angry and hate the person.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much of that. And also, there's the recognition that, okay, if I go down this path of drama and blame, I'm going to hold that frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's going to become my world.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to wake up to these understandings that other people aren't, making you feel a certain way and
mm-hmm.
victimhood isn't real, you start to have that conscious choice of, do I want to go down that path?
Yeah.
Is it really worth it? And I know from like the perspective of like a single mom going through that transition, there's just the big fear that I'm not going to be taken care of.
Yeah, exactly. And that's very true. It's like that terror of like, most women are like, okay, well, I need child support because I need to be taken care of. And I've decided that the universe is going to take care of me.
Yeah.
And it has, and again, but it definitely is, that fear of like, I'm not going to be provided for. My child's not going to be provided for. So I need to make it happen in the only way that I see it happening.
Yeah, that's a great point. In the only way that I see it happening. The traditional sense of whatever. But when I was in a marriage, and I was for like 11 years, and raising 3 girls, I remember like distinct moments of realizing that I'm not the one that's providing. It's like, because there's that play of, okay, nobody else is working and I'm the one that's going to work to a job I don't like and paying bills. And there was so much stress wrapped around the idea that I'm the one that has to make it happen.
Yeah.
But then there was this beautiful letting go of realizing that life's the one that's providing everything. And I'm just showing up, like that song. And so you just kind of show up in the best way that you can and then let life take care of everything else. And it released so much tension and stress within the environment in the way of money would come in, but I didn't care what happened to it. Because typically it's like, okay, no, there's this much dollars and I got to do this and this has to happen and don't you dare think about doing that.
Yeah.
But there was just a complete letting go of that. And it was funny because it went from like a total poverty situation on government assistance and subsidized housing and all of that, from that mind space of limitation, thinking that I had to be all whatever in control.
Yeah.
And then as I let go of that, the whole dynamic shifted. It was like this new abundant life that I didn't even know was an option.
Yeah.
And so as we let go of those limitations and broaden the potential within our own space, it's like life just fills it. Life fills it with the possibility.
Yeah.
And that's living a stress-free life, which is just letting life do it all.
That's what I was thinking of, how everybody wants freedom, basically. Yeah. Like, people are like, okay, if I want $1 million because then I'm free to go on an island and sit on the beach all day. Yeah. That's what I want to do. Or I can do whatever I want, you know, if I have that money for the freedom. And you can get that freedom first, again, by shifting the way that you tell your stories and the amount that you can let go of your fears and that restrictive, that grasping for security. Because I guess it's that, do you want security, the illusion, or do you want freedom?
Yeah. The illusion.
Or do you want control, or do you want freedom?
Yeah. And the funny thing is even if you got $1 million without clearing up that conflict inside, it doesn't change a damn thing.
Yeah, and they say that the lottery winners, so many of them go bankrupt within a few years because they still have that. Yeah. That internal state.
The broke mentality.
But of course, people don't necessarily believe that. They're like, well, I'm different.
Yeah.
So if I got $1 million, it would be different. It's like, maybe it would.
Wow, she's really stoked to be here. And she's chewing on a credit card.
Yeah. She's like, I'm abundant and supported. See?
That's right.
I just eat money for breakfast.
That totally looks like a commercial with that Visa logo. Oh my goodness. And so the movement of feeling like we need all this stuff or want all this stuff so we can be free. Yeah. And even if we got it, it wouldn't matter because the only authentic freedom to experience in this life is the one that's inside of you.
Yeah. In the now.
Yeah, regardless of circumstance.
Yeah.
And it is just for now.
Yeah.
And I think that's what human beings are looking for, is a security that exists beyond now, and there isn't that. Yeah. There just isn't that. And it seems like that's just something that I learn more and more all the time. Yeah. Is no matter what happens, it doesn't prove anything.
Yeah. Well, and that's definitely something that I had to figure out and practice over time, was that something meant something. Like, if I didn't have enough money, it meant that I was a failure. Right. And I was doing something wrong. Or if I, there's all that seeking that value or your definition in the externals, and the externals meaning something
right,
bad about you
Yeah.
if it's not meeting your expectations.
Yeah. And that's part of the clearing up, too.
Yeah.
And I remember that in my experience with being broke, busted, and disgusted,
Yeah.
was having all of these judgments that
Yeah.
says my circumstance means this about me.
Yeah.
And so I would just feel like a total failure based on what I saw around me,
Yeah.
and which is just a judgment.
Yeah. It's not going to help you.
No,
To a
it
different
doesn't help
place,
at all.
yeah.
And it's so funny how much energy will sit and spin
Yeah.
on that cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a punishment.
Oh,
Anyway,
yeah.
I need to punish myself. But that's how we raise our children.
Yeah.
Is I need to punish you to teach you how to do it right. Whereas they're already doing it right. They're living in the
Right.
present moment. They don't have any fear. You know, they're joyful. They're exploring. They're having fun.
Yeah.
And then we, you know, that's what they have. She has freedom. She's totally free right now. She's like, I
Yeah.
do anything I want right now. I have no worries.
She's not saying, man, if only I was at a beach right now.
No. Or if only I had more money in my bank account. Or if only I had a boyfriend. Or if
Yeah.
only I had a house. Or,
Yeah.
yeah.
She could be walking around with shit in her diaper and she's still
Yeah,
totally
right?
fine. Oh,
Yeah.
I wish I was that free.
And this is her house. It's like wherever she is, it's hers.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
she just is.
And that's such a truth about life too. It's like
Yeah.
wherever we're at, we're really home.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, this is the new home right now.
That's a good feeling.
It is.
Yeah.
It
to be
is.
home in your body with yourself
Yeah.
everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Like that's, again, what everybody's seeking.
Mm-hmm.
But getting that internal state, like that's really what we're seeking.
Yeah. Yeah. How would you say, I mean, practically, I don't even know if we can address it in such a simplistic way that includes everyone listening. But, I mean, for somebody that's hearing what we're talking about and understands it, but again, is still at that place of what the fuck,
Yeah.
you know, especially if we're like in emotional turmoil,
Yeah.
maybe that's not the best place to start, but
Well, I feel like it's moving in the direction of something that feels better.
that's
Whether,
so brilliant.
you know, I mean, that's really all it comes down to.
Yeah.
Whether that's, you know, going to watch a movie, or
Yeah.
whether that's calling up a friend, or
That's
that's
not
taking a nap.
responsible.
Yeah, right? But it's like, it's really just that, like, whatever it is that it sounds like would be fun
Yeah.
or pleasurable. And again, it's not chasing things or, like, going out and getting smashed. Like, maybe that's what you need to do is go
Yeah.
get drunk. Like,
Yeah.
I definitely tried that for years.
Yeah.
And there's a slight difference, though, again, of, like, following your joy or excitement versus numbing yourself and
Yeah.
getting relief, which is still a level of relief. And
Yeah.
so for me, it's still a form of self-care.
Yeah.
Like if your only relief that you can get is drugs or alcohol,
Yeah.
then I'm not actually going to say that you shouldn't do that.
Right. Right.
You know, which again, a lot of people don't like to hear that.
Well, and that's what I love about the approach too, is it's totally like personal for the universe that's asking.
Yeah.
You know, from the perspective of one person, because there isn't anything that says everyone needs to do this
No.
and this doesn't work for
Yeah.
everyone. And I really love that freedom, especially in my own life, of finding what feels authentically good.
Yeah.
Again, not running away, but realizing that I am free and
Yeah.
I can enjoy myself.
Yeah.
And I'm notorious for going to movies by myself.
Yeah.
And some people think it's weird. You know, don't you have any friends?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to go by myself.
Yeah.
That sounds like a kick-ass time. And
But you really do get to get lost when you go by yourself, because you
Yeah.
don't have that person next to you like, oh, what are you like? How are you? Are you okay? Are you enjoying this? You just get to lose yourself completely in the movie.
yeah. There's no reminders of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just even thinking about anybody else. It's
Yeah.
just like you're there to have your own personal
Yeah.
experience of the movie, which is life. Again,
Yeah.
there's that, you know.
But and that's what life is kind of inviting you to do
Yeah.
in this play or in
Yeah.
this movie, is to lose yourself and
just
forget
enjoy
yourself.
the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so true.
But going back to that, how to live this, because that's something that I've asked for years and chased actively and questioned and researched and all this stuff and I really just it's personal, because it depends on the person and where they are and who they are, and everybody's so different that there is no one answer.
Yeah.
And you can say meditation,
Yeah.
but until you're ready to meditate, you can't. Like,
Yeah.
you're not going to be, and maybe, you know, for now your meditation is drinking every night.
Yeah.
That might be your meditation.
Oh, my-
Well, you know, again, like,
oh, spiritual bullshit. I love it.
spiritual bullshit.
Yeah.
And, but I would say if there is something like you've always wanted to try, like meditation, like for years, I was like, oh my God, I want to meditate. Like, I'd love to meditate someday. And I wasn't ready for it. And then finally one day I was, and I took a class,
Yeah.
or someone came to me and was like, oh, do you want to learn to meditate? And I was like, yeah. And so I went to her house and she taught me.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's really about following whatever is interesting to you.
Yeah.
In the next step, in the next moment.
And when you're open to it, when you like make this conscious decision, and it's funny, I think about how it's kind of like accepting Jesus in your heart.
Yeah.
It's like you make a conscious decision for some sort of openness or surrender of control.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not necessarily the words, it's the openness in the heart that says, I see that I'm not in control like I thought I was.
Yeah.
I see that life is so much more than I thought it was, and so please show me.
Yeah.
And that's like repentance in a certain way. It's like, I'm going to surrender to something that's so much more powerful than my limited idea of myself.
Yeah. Or just more expansive.
Yeah, more expansive.
Yeah.
And then life somehow comes in and shows you.
Yeah.
And that's the part that we really can't pinpoint, is how is life going to come in and show you?
Yeah.
Which is the security that's being sought after. I want to know how this is going to go.
Yeah.
But there isn't an answer to that.
No. And I guess it is that intention, like having the intention. Okay, like I want something different.
Yeah.
I want something more enjoyable for me.
Yeah.
And having that intention, and then starting to look like, okay, well, what directions can I move in that are not doing the same thing that I've been doing?
Yeah.
Like again, going back to drinking, like I drank a lot for years, and finally I got to the point where I was like, you know what, this isn't really adding value to my life. My party friends aren't really deep friends. I don't know these people. We just go get drunk together. And it's at a certain point, it was fun for years, and I had a great time, and I partied my ass off, and I'm glad I did it. But then at a certain point, it was no longer fulfilling my need for fun or relief or whatever. And so it's like, okay, well, what's the next step? And so then I went from this like very hardcore party lifestyle into meditation and spirituality. Yeah. And then I started meditating every day instead of drinking every day. Yeah. But a little bit by bit, like I started with a 5-minute meditation. Yeah. And that was difficult. Yeah. And then I worked my way up to 11 hours a day of meditating when I was doing the Vipassana retreat. Oh, nice. Which I actually want to throw out there because I heard about it from other people in the blogging world years ago. And so Vipassana is a 10-day silent meditation retreat. Yeah. And the first time I heard that, I was like, oh, I want to do that. That sounds awesome. Which some people are like, that sounds horrible. Yeah, like, why would you want to be silent for 10 days? And again, it's not like better, worse, right, wrong. Yeah. But it's just, for me, that sounded fascinating. And I was so excited to do it. And so that was my path, was to go to do this 10-day silent meditation retreat. Yeah. But somebody else's path is something else, completely different. For sure. And
I love how you mentioned, coming out of the drinking phase, and just seeing that it didn't serve. It wasn't a judgment that says, oh, I'm a terrible person, I need to change. Yeah. It's just recognizing that this doesn't seem like it's in alignment with joy anymore. Yeah. And then also, you're clearly saying that it's okay if that's the path. Yeah. So we're not like encouraging judgment. It's like, no, if that's where you are, that's where you are. Yeah. And life isn't looking at that being like you're a terrible person. No. And there were positive aspects, I would, this like party scene that I was in, I would go out and I would get 40 hugs. Anytime I went out, I knew I would see 10 to 40 people that I knew, and they were all happy to see me, and they would hug me. Yeah. And it was a level of love. Even that was a level of love. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we're constantly being drawn towards, is love. Yeah. It seems like every desire that we have is for some sense of love. Yeah. Or some sense of experience or expansion of love. Yeah.
Well, and then how do you define love, too? Because that's a juicy question. Yeah. Of like really going into love, which for me, over the years, I've figured out it's absolute acceptance. Yeah. And appreciation. Yeah. And attention. Obviously you're present with the person. But the absolute acceptance part was huge for me. Like that realization of love isn't like, oh, I love you and blah, blah, blah. It's like absolute acceptance of myself and absolute acceptance of the other person. Like that's love. Yeah. Yeah. And I think we miss that sometimes, that it includes what I am. Mm-hmm. It's not just about loving everything in the world, because you could also love your response to the world. Yeah. It's like people think, okay, well, if I just love everything, then I'm giving someone permission to punch me in the face. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, because you're also loving your ability to not, to enjoy life and to feel good and not be injured by other people around you.
And so it's including everything. Yeah.
When I would say, the self is the most important key part, because it's the foundation, it's the fundamental.
Yeah, that's where everything's coming from. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And until you really love yourself, you're always going to have any blocks you have against yourself, you're going to have against whoever's outside of you.
Yeah.
And so there's the limitation that you have for loving yourself is going to be the limitation that you have for loving other people.
Yeah. And that's what life is always showing us in our relationships with other people too, is how we're not loving ourselves.
Well, and that's the heartbreak part, I guess, is the part, like, again, like going back to like, what is heartbreak really? Mm-hmm. And it's the breaking of those illusions, but it's also, it's like the breaking of the limits to your love. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, because I've placed my limit in this one little box, and now that box isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
And now I'm destroyed because I put everything in it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it makes a more expansive opportunity to love someone. And not even like, because I know some people that have a heartbreak and be like, okay, well, I never want to do that again.
Yeah.
Which I understand on some level, yes, we don't want to set ourselves up, unconsciously to suffer.
With the illusions, yeah.
Yeah, with the illusions. Yeah. But we can still love in a deeper way, which is to not attach ourselves to that person, not put our wellness in that person.
Or our assumptions about that person and our ideas about that person.
And I'd really like to do a podcast where we just talk about relationships too.
Yes.
Because it's because again, all of life is just relationship.
Yeah.
And I still got a book on my computer that I'm wanting to finish or write called The One Relationship.
Yeah.
Which is to see how everything just points back,
to
your relationship with yourself. But it's such a beautiful reflection all the time.
Yeah. And it like you said, it's everything in life is relationships. Like human beings are a social animal. They're not meant to just be by themselves.
Yeah.
Like that's just not how humans function.
Mm-hmm.
But it really does come down to that. From what I figured out on my path is the loving the self is really that key, fundamental basis for everything.
Yeah.
And then it goes into like, well, we're not taught how to love ourselves. We're taught how to, berate ourselves or sacrifice ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm going to try not to do that to you, but I'm sure you'll get those messages from other people. So, yeah. Oh,
well, this has been another awesome episode of Spiritual Bullshit.
It has been.
Yeah. I love it. We just kind of show up.
Yeah. Sometimes we bring babies.
Yeah. And then Shasta. Thanks for hanging out with us. We appreciate your spirit.
Sorry we can't translate your words yet into English, but you'll translate them for us eventually, huh?
All right, so check us out on Facebook. Check us out online. tsb81.com is the School of Blooming. The Tigmonk page where you can find these podcasts. Also on SoundCloud. Can they just search your name on SoundCloud?
Yeah, or Spiritual Bullshit on SoundCloud.
Oh, yeah.
Or Maya Lila. Yeah.
Search Spiritual Bullshit or Maya Lila. And then other than that, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I get a high five?
High five.
All right. Aloha. Cheers.
Bye.